Chords make a melody sound cool. They add interesting colors and can really change the music's mood. When I was a kid, I used to play around with chords and the different effects that they made. What professional musicians know, however, is that beyond the cool sonorities, there is a tonal harmonic language revealed by the chord's harmonic functions. And knowing the syntax of tonal harmony will uncover how a chord progression can take the audience on a journey. Different genres and styles of music have different ways of using harmony to achieve the sound that they want. Take, for example, this excerpt from Lily Boulanger's 1918 work, Of a Spring Morning. Instead of a goal-oriented succession of different chords, the left-hand part of the piano on the bottom staff gently wafts upward and downward over a D-flat 2 drone. The music's forward momentum mostly comes from the violin melody and the piano countermelody that surge higher and higher, while the harmony here serves to add color. In the next section of the same piece, Boulanger changes the harmonic style, giving the piano accompaniment an ostinato, or an incessantly repeated accompanimental idea that never changes. The ostinato makes the harmony static in this passage as well, while the violin gradually increases the energy by creeping upward as it repeats the same 4-bar melody up a step. Another familiar harmonic style that pervades the music of today is chord cycles, or repeated short progressions of just 2 to 4 chords, or sometimes longer. A chord cycle is like an ostinato, but isn't so inflexibly identical every time that it repeats. Here's an example of a 4-chord cycle in the chorus sung by Ray Dalton from Macklemore and Ryan Lewis's hit song, Can't Hold Us. Here the music is designed to create an uncontrollable urge to join in and dance, messaging that combines synergistically with the song's lyrics that conflate joining their movement across the country with joining a party that's about to blow the roof off. The repetition of a groove with a repeated pattern of chords and rhythm gives the listeners something predictable but interesting to align their movements with, along with a foundation for delivering lyrics and adding musical elements that create timbral and dynamic variety throughout the song. Some popular music does use goal-oriented chord progressions like classical music does, though. Here's an example of a much longer chord cycle from Billy Joel's song Piano Man that also works like 2 phrases of tonal music. Here, each of the phrases has a distinct direction and goal because of the stepwise descending bass line and the 2-5 turnaround and 5-1 cadence at the phrase endings. And the harmonic voyage is what distinguishes tonal music from the other harmonic languages we've just seen. Harmonic functions tell you about a chord progression's journey. Analyzing harmonic functions is the most useful for understanding goal-directed tonal harmony. Functional analysis can also help highlight the different effects produced by various chord cycles. But other analysis techniques are required for getting a sense of the harmony of ostinato and drone music, as well as atonal music. In this video series, we'll be sticking with traditional functional tonality and learning about harmonic function. Getting proficient at analyzing classical music is important because it is so influential on all the music that came after it. Even if your career will be in jazz, pop, Latin, electronic, or contemporary Christian music, the better you understand classical tonality, the better you'll understand these other genres that use the same types of chords in somewhat different ways. These harmonic journeys at the heart of tonality are rooted in conventions concerning how music should flow toward a cadence. Cadences are formalized ending gestures that involve certain chord combinations. Today we're going to learn about the phrase model, which is the structure around which many possible harmonic journeys are organized. In the previous videos, we were labeling chords to know what they are, but in this video, you're going to learn how to use the phrase model to uncover the unique path that each progression takes toward its cadential goal. So let's get started learning about harmonic function. Remember that we use Roman numerals to label the chord roots in a harmonic progression. Just turn the scale degree number of the chord's root into a Roman numeral, and then write it in uppercase for major triads, major seventh chords, and dominant sevenths, in lowercase for minor triads, minor sevenths, and minor major sevenths, in uppercase with a plus sign after it for augmented triads, and in lowercase with a circle after it for diminished triads, fully diminished seventh chords, and half diminished sevenths, where you'll need to slash the circle. Roman numerals can be grouped together based on which primary triad they act like. Which ones are the primary triads? 1, 4, and 5 are the primary triads. Remember that each diatonic chord has a name. So what are the names of the three primary triads? Tonic, subdominant, and dominant. These three names are used not just for the chords themselves, but also to identify the harmonic functions of these chords. Even if it's not a one chord, if it's acting like a one chord, we will call it a tonic chord. There's a group of chords that can all be used the same way you would use a one chord, and a group that works like a four chord, and also a group that works like a five chord. These chord groups are called harmonic functions. But which other chords act like one chords? Let's make a chart of which other chords can be substituted for each primary triad in a progression. We'll put 1 at the top as the quintessential tonic chord, and spread 4 and 5 apart on the circle as the focal points of subdominant and dominant functions. Now let's fill in the other chords, starting with the chord halfway between 1 and 5, which is 3. Next, let's go the other direction from 1 and add the chord that's halfway to 4, which would be 6. There's a pattern developing here. If you look around the circle clockwise, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5, those are all thirds. So this is a circle of thirds. Let's complete the circle with a third above 5, which is 7, and a third above that, which is 2. If you organize your Roman numerals this way, it'll help you figure out what the harmonic functions are. The chords that are closest to 1 act like tonic and can be substituted for a 1 chord in a progression without it sounding wrong. So the tonic function chords are 6 and 3. The 6th chord is halfway to 4, so it has a tiny bit of a subdominant sound to it. But it still sounds more like a 1 chord than a 4 chord because it doesn't have scale degree 4 in it. For the 3 chord, because we're going in the other direction halfway to 5, it actually can sometimes switch to working like a dominant function chord. This is the only exception that you'll see where a chord sometimes changes categories. It doesn't happen often, but you will need to remember this when we get into secondary dominants and other chromatically inflected chords. The only time when a 3 chord acts like a dominant instead of a tonic is when it's followed by another tonic function chord. If the next chord after 3 is a subdominant chord or a dominant chord, then it's just a regular tonic function chord. The chords that are close to 5 on the circle are 3 and 7. As I just mentioned, 3 sometimes functions as dominant because it's close to 5, but 7 is the other chord close to 5, and its dominant function is unambiguous. The only chord we haven't talked about is 2, located symmetrically opposite 7 on the circle, and therefore securely within subdominant function. So tonic function is 1, 6, and 3, subdominant is 4 and 2, and dominant is 5 and 7. There are only 7 diatonic chords, and each is one of the 3 harmonic functions. With only a little practice, you'll have the function of each Roman numeral memorized. Let's see how you need to use these as analysis symbols for chords in a chord progression. To add this functional information to our analyses, we'll be using functional base symbols. This might sound fancy and complicated, but it's really quite simple. First, you write a capital T, S, or D as an abbreviation for tonic, subdominant, or dominant function. And then you add the scale degree number of the chord's base note, written as an Arabic numeral with a pointy hat. And that's it, functional base. Where students sometimes mess this up is when the chord is not in root position. In inverted chords, the Roman numeral, which tells you the root scale degree number, and the functional base will have different numbers. For example, a 1 chord in first inversion has scale degree 3 in the base, so its Roman numeral is 1, but its functional base is T3. Let's see this in action with some chord progressions. I've already analyzed this music's pop chord symbols for you, so let's figure out the key of the music and then analyze the Roman numerals. Let's not rely on the key signature to restrict our choices, though, since there are cases in real music where this will lead you astray. Since the last chord is a major triad, it could either be 1 in a major key authentic cadence, 5 in a major or minor key half cadence, or 6 in a minor key deceptive cadence. We can immediately rule out this last option because the chord right before the ending B-flat major triad would have to be an A chord to be the 5 to the B-flat's 6. Here's the Roman numeral progression for the half cadence option. And here's the Roman numeral progression for the authentic cadence option in B flat. In the E flat major progression, the weird minor 7 chord and the 6-4-3 chord, along with all the dominant 7th chord qualities falling on the 2 chords instead of the 5 chords, don't sit right with me. So we'll go with the key of B flat major. Now that we have the correct Roman numeral analysis, we can proceed with adding functional base symbols. The first chord's root is 5, so its harmonic function is dominant. And since it's in first inversion, its base scale degree is different from the root. In the key of B flat, the base note A is scale degree 7. The second chord is a 1 chord in root position, so its functional base is really easy. It's just T1. The next 2 chords in this progression are the other 2 chords in the tonic column of our harmonic function chart, so their functional base symbols are T6 and T3. The 4 chord that follows moves us out of the tonic zone into subdominant function, and its functional base symbol is S4. Now pause the video and see if you can fill in the next chord's analysis symbol on your own. In our chart, the 2 chord is subdominant, and the base note of this chord, G, is scale degree 6 in the key of B flat. So this is an S6 chord. And the last 2 chords are almost identical to the first 2, except that the F7 chord is in root position. That means that instead of D7, this F7 is D5, and the last chord is a T1. Here's another example to analyze with the key Roman numerals and functional base. Stop the video now to see if you can add the correct analysis notation before I reveal the solution. The key might have been a little tricky on this one, since I ended this progression with a deceptive cadence. This progression couldn't be the end of a piece of tonal music, but phrases like this one often happen in the middle of a piece. So we're in C sharp minor. If you got this wrong, pause now to redo the rest of your analysis. And here's the answer. Notice in both of our examples, the music was cycling through the harmonic functions in the order T, S, D, T, S, D, sometimes pausing for multiple chords in a single function category, but never backtracking from T to D, D to S, or S to T. These two progressions follow what we call the phrase model. This is a normative harmonic pattern for a simple thematic phrase of music. This isn't the only pattern that phrases can follow in real music, but it's the most important one for tonal music. So we'll use it as the basis for our analyses for now. The phrase model says that phrases tend to start on tonic function. Then they move to subdominant function, and then to dominant function. And then, depending on the type of cadence, they can go back to tonic function. If it's a half cadence, then it's going to end on a D5. But deceptive cadences and authentic cadences go back to tonic at the end. So TSDT is the normal way that phrases work. And so all of the music that we're going to see for a while is going to follow this phrase model. There's music that goes against the flow of the phrase model, where you'll have a subdominant chord followed by a tonic chord or something like that. Whenever this happens, we'll call it a plagal progression. But if it's going tonic to subdominant, or subdominant to dominant, or dominant to tonic, it's called an authentic progression. And if we have two of the same harmonic functions in a row, that's called no function change. So plagal is anything that moves against the flow of the phrase model. Anything that suspends motion through the phrase model is called no function change. And authentic motion is anything that moves with the flow of the phrase model. In the near future, we'll start grouping chords together to show the big three harmonic functional zones, T, S, and D, that lead to the cadence. To be ready for this, you can start doing this now by putting parentheses around the functional base symbols for chords that have no function change from the previous chord. Here's what that would look like for the first example that we just analyzed. There are 3 tonic chords in a row, followed by 2 subdominants. So we'll put the second and third tonic chords and the second subdominant in parentheses. This phrase of music starts with a single preparatory dominant chord that sets up our sense of the key before beginning the phrase model proper. This is common in a lot of music. The parenthesized chords make it clear that after the first chord, the music has one of each chord in the phrase model in the proper order, T, S, D, T. And here's how the second of today's examples reduces down to the phrase model. In this case, only the first couple of harmonic functions need parentheses around a second chord, revealing that the progression spends exactly one measure in each zone of the phrase model. This process of finding the phrase model won't always be this straightforward, though. As our progressions become more complex, it will be clearer if we write our parentheses like this, with only the letter for each harmonic function outside the parentheses to set it off from the rest of that functional zone's analysis. This makes it even easier to see the phrase model at the core of a phrase's harmonic progression. And here's the practice worksheet for today's topic. Once you've got the harmonic functions and the 3 types of harmonic progression, you're ready to start working on the skill of arranging music in 4 parts. We'll also start learning about the different ways in which chords can be structured to stretch one harmonic function over several chords, to drive toward a cadence, or to lock in a pattern that directs listeners' attention toward the melodic development rather than cadential goals. That's when we'll finally be able to talk about how different types of chord progressions in a phrase shape the phrase's function within a whole piece of music. And it all comes down to these three harmonic functions.